Hello guys, let's solve this problem, Java subarray on HackerRank. A subarray of an n-element array is an array composed from a contiguous block of the original array's elements. So a subarray is a section of the array and it is composed of contiguous block elements. So if there is an array 1, 2, 3, so its subarray would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3. We cannot include 1, 3 because then we would be skipping 2. So the sum of an array is the total sum of its element. The sum of this array is 1, the sum of this array is 2, the sum of this array is 5 because 2 plus 3 is 5, the sum of this array is 6 because 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. An array sum is negative if the total sum of its element is negative, and an array sum is positive if the total sum of its element is positive. So firstly we would be given an integer n that would denote the length of the array. Then we would be given the elements of the array. So what we have to do is we have to print the number of subarrays of A having negative sum. So we have to calculate the number of subarrays that have negative sums. So what we'll do is we will firstly create a scanner object using scanner class. Now we would declare an integer n that would store the value of the length of the array, the first line basically. Now I would declare an array of int type. I would write int, name it r is equal to new. Now for the length I would be writing n because n is the length of the array. Now to input the elements we would use a for loop. Int I is equal to 0, I is less than n, increment I by 1. Now I would input the elements of the array. So what we'll do is we will find out all the possible subarrays and we would calculate the sum, and if the sum is negative we would also declare an integer named count. So if the sum is negative we would increment it by 1. So what I would do, I would declare a variable count, initialize it to 0. Now this count here would count the number of subarrays that have negative sum. So to calculate all the possible subarrays I would use a nested for loop. I is less than n, I plus plus. For the inner loop I would write int j is initialized to I, and then j is less than n, j plus plus. I also want to calculate the sum for all these possible subarrays. So I would also declare a variable here, int sum, and initialize it to 0. We also have to calculate the sum. For the sum I would write sum is equal to the element of array present in jth location plus the sum. So this nested for loop would calculate the sum of all subarrays. So now I have to check if the sum is less than 0, then it would increment this count by 1. So if the sum is negative it would increment this count. So I would write an if condition that if the sum is less than 0, increment the count by 1. So now that I have checked the condition, lastly I would print out this count, that is the number of subarrays that have negative sum. So I would write system.out.println count. Now if I run the code, it has passed all the test cases. Now if I submit it, so the code is correct and it has passed all the test cases.